everyone, it's Becky here. Welcome to another new video on my YouTube channel. And today I am in downtown Montreal. So my French class this morning was cancelled because the teacher got sick. So I decided just to walk around before going home. I really want to challenge myself to sketch this one-point perspective street view. And I'm sitting down on the bench outside Dorchester Square. Yeah, so the rest of the video, including the drawing and painting process, is going to be in real-time speed because I don't want the video to be too shaky. When I'm filming myself sketching, when putting the sketchbook on my lap, yeah, it's a little bit shaky because my leg is very unstable. Yeah, because this is a pretty challenging one-point perspective with a lot of three-dimensional prism and cube shapes of the buildings. I am using a number 2 pencil to kind of lightly lay out the perspective of the building. So if you're watching, please enter full screen so you can see my pencil lines better. I don't want to just sketch too hard, so otherwise it will be too hard to erase. So I'm sketching very lightly to draw these cube shapes of the building on the other side of the street. Yeah, so the lines on top and on the bottom of each building is very important. So the line above my eye level, all the lines are slanting down towards the right. And all the lines below my eye level are going upwards towards the right. So that's the idea of one-point perspective. Yeah, so later on when I'm drawing with my ink pen, you can see this idea even better. So now the lines are very vague and just giving myself a better mental image by just making everything more secure. Make sure I'm not drawing way too big or too small. Yeah. And also having a lot of imagination while using pencil to do the work. So kind of visualize how the final drawing might look like. Yeah, and just adding a last couple of lines, these super important lines that defines the perspective, and make sure that I include all the buildings on this block that I want to include. Yeah, the street line underneath the sidewalk is very important. And yeah, that's it. I'm gonna let go and just be brave. Just go into ink pen right now. There's no need for further details once the general perspective is laid out. All right, I'm gonna start on the very left because I'm right-handed. I like to start drawing on the left most of the time. This building is pretty close to me, so it's the tallest. And drawing the rooftop, and this one is slanting down towards the vanishing point on the right. And right beside it, there is this street lamp right in front of it. And the bottom of the street lamp is somewhere over there. And now I'm drawing the left side of this building. Yeah, so these lines on the left of this building is slanting down towards the left. So this makes up the 3-dimension of a prism-shaped building, and just adding a tiny little person underneath, walking past by just to establish the proportion of the building. So now all of a sudden, this abstract prism shape, it looks pretty huge. It makes sense that is a building. And just adding some little rooftop details. Yeah, and now I'm just adding a seagull flying by. It's nice to add some birds in the sky just to give a little bit more liveliness to this cityscape. Yeah, keep adding more lines inside the contour outline of the building, following the rule of perspective. So apparently this is actually a 2-point perspective. As you can see, the lines on the left of this building is going down towards the left, and on the right is going down towards the right. So there are 2 vanishing points apparently. And just adding a couple windows over there. But before that, I want to add another person passing by on the bottom of the building. Yeah, adding human figures is very important to establish the proportions in a landscape or cityscape and makes the buildings seem huge. Okay, now I want to kind of move into the inner details of this building. There are actually lots of windows, so that takes a bit of patience. And again, I'm not worried about making every single look exactly the same. Drawing is not about drawing perfect lines mechanically. So even though in real life these windows are exactly the same size, designed and built by engineers, but as artists, we don't have to be the same. We don't have to draw like a machine. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, I am not hesitating about drawing or worrying about the exact size and shape. The most important thing is to understand the perspective and get the big picture right. The details inside could be very loose and playful. And this is how I am able to keep a very consistent, almost daily habit in sketching. My everyday life is that I don't stress about being perfect. A lot of people they're not able to have a very consistent habit because they're always judging themselves. They're always evaluating themselves that if they don't make perfect pictures, they wouldn't continue. But the reality is that we are humans, and the purpose of drawing and painting every day is about recording and expressing our beings in the world. And I think there's a huge difference from drawing and painting from reference photos compared to drawing in real life. So right now I am drawing in real life. I can catch so many sensory elements like the sounds of birds around me, people passing by, and squirrels scurry around behind me. So the scenery right in front of me is not static at all. It's very lively with the movement of traffic, the people, and the stores. Yeah, so these energies is really transforming in towards me, and that's how I'm making my lines really loose. So if I work from reference photos, so I feel like a lot of times my lines seem to get more tight. Yeah, so when working from real life observations, I could sketch much faster and capture the essence very quickly. And also because of today's weather, I think there's gonna be pouring rain coming in the next 2 hours or so. So I had to work fast. And again, working fast doesn't mean to rush. So I am working fast in a very natural way without rushing things. Still have a very clear ideas of the perspective and what I'm doing in each step. Yeah, so now I'm drawing a guy walking across the street, starting with his head. He was wearing a hat, shirt, and he has legs. Most of the time, people just pass by in about 5 seconds. So, yeah, just try your best to do it from memory. Capture their gestures from memory. And just keep this human figure really simple. And now I am adding some plaques around the midline, just very simple details for the inside. There is another plaque of a pub or restaurant over there. Yeah. And just really taking my time to add some other shapes on the building that I see. Yeah, there are a lot of small shapes. Most of the shapes are actually very simple, like squares and rectangles, so don't overthink. Just like trust what you see and just fill those shapes in. Yeah, most of those shapes are different kinds of squares or rectangles. And vertical lines, just fill in these spaces of windows. Yeah, and some more, a lot of repetition, so just relax. And to capture the liveliness of a cityscape like this, I think it's good to keep our lines very loose. Okay, yeah, so that's that upper floor of the building. Underneath, we do have a lot of overlappings, like cars, bicycles. I'm just gonna add another human figure over here because it's busy. It's a busy downtown cityscape. So I'm trying to add as many human figures as I can to show the vibe. Yeah, and here we have like a row of bicycles. Yeah, a lot of just a bunch of circular shapes. A very foreshortened view, the front view of those bikes. And door frames above those bikes, adding a little bit darker accentuation to show the shade in between the bars. Yeah, a lot of smaller shapes contained within the bigger shapes. Yeah, this line of the sidewalk is going upwards toward the right because it's below my eye level. And adding the front door of this shop on the right hand side of the building. Yeah, just adding a little bit accentuation underneath the brim over there on top. And that's pretty much it for this building in the front that is closest to me. Adding some details for that plaque. And now I'm trying to connect the next building. Over here, this one is looking a little bit shorter because it's actually a little bit shorter than the one on the left. And also because of this 1-point perspective, it's shrinking the height of these buildings, getting further away from me. Yeah, so after the outline, I'm just filling in the upstairs area with these windows in very thin rectangular shapes and the frames inside. Yeah, and just watch out of these lines on the waist area of these buildings. They're actually going down because it's still above my eye level. Lines above our eye levels, usually they're going down into the vanishing point. And I just added a door frame and a car right in front of the door. Yeah, and right, and I'm kind of looking at the door, add some more details around it, and fill the inside with some dark shade and accentuation with black ink. And some more textures for the building on the outside. Now I'm seeing another person walking across the street, and he's a little bit closer to me compared to the guy in front of him, so he's a little bit bigger and a little taller. He was wearing a backpack, and just fill his hair with black ink. Yeah, and now I'm ready to add the third building toward the right. As you can see, the line on the top floor is sinking down into the vanishing point. And these buildings are around the same height, and because of this perspective view, they seem like they're getting shorter and shorter, but they are actually around the same height, these buildings. Okay, so now I want to add another seagull or pigeon flying overhead. Yeah, and these two birds are kind of like guiding the viewer's eyes around this image. And also because the sky area is pretty big, it's nice to have a couple birds in there. And the next building. Yeah, I can see the left side of that building and the right side in a cube shape. It's getting less and less detailed for these buildings moving toward the right. It's a nice way to show a sense of distance by adding less and less details for objects further in the distance away from you or the viewer. I'm going to add a little bit more detail for the displayed windows on the first floor of this window. Nice and loose. Yeah, and just use a few simple lines to suggest the shape of windows. And for the windows on the buildings further into the distance, we can't really see the windows in clear rectangular or square shapes anymore. They're just like little lines, very thin little lines. Yep. These buildings are being very foreshortened in the distance. And add some more smaller cars in the distance underneath those buildings as well. It's getting more and more simplified into the distance. And now I want to add another building behind. Yeah, there's some more. Okay, and now I'm drawing the building behind this row of main buildings. Yeah, and to fill the inside, the windows with simple rectangle shapes. And now I am kind of like having a mental image first and then start drawing the left side of this tallest building's left side. Again, is a prism shape. Yeah, and we can see two sides of it. The side on the left is a little smaller and the side on the right is pretty big. And the top lines are slanting down in two different directions. And adding these pipes or chimneys on top of this building. And again, just adding these quick squares to show the little windows. Yeah, drawing very quickly, and every single square is actually a little bit different. And there's actually an abstract mural on the right-hand side of this tallest building. So I'm just going to omit that, not drawing it. I'm going to use paint to show the abstract pattern on the right side of that building behind. And just adding a little bit accentuation to show the dark shaded area. And adding another heritage building with chimneys right on there. And also, when I'm sketching a really complicated cityscape like this, I try not to overthink and just try to connect one part after another. So one large chunk of building shape after another, and then fill in those large chunks with smaller details like the windows and doors. Yep. And connecting the next one around the right side. So most of these shapes that I'm drawing right now is very easy. Yeah, so everyone who can write can draw these simple shapes, but it's actually not easy to look at the real scenery of everyday life and try to interpret it into these simple symbolic shapes. Okay, so that's a very different story. So again, my philosophy about sketching my life is that I have to work from real life. In my art journal, unless I'm teaching a class, I never work from photographs. So because I learned I can capture so much more from real life than those static photographs. Now I'm just adding another nice foreground element over here. The lamp post in the foreground on my side of the street with a lot of interesting signs and direction signs in various different rectangles. Yeah, and adding this little human figure inside that poster. And just trying to draw this important line of the sidewalk that I'm sitting on. Yeah, the line is slanting upwards towards the right. And add some more little cars pretty far away on the other side of the street. Again, I'm simplifying those cars just into squarish shapes. And draw another tree there. Yeah, and drawing another line slanting down towards the right. And these buildings, they seem to be shorter and shorter, moving further into the distance. Apparently, the reality is they are around the same height, but because of perspective, their height is being kind of foreshortened. Yeah, and adding some more little shapes to suggest the windows. I think that's pretty much it. I know there are like thousands of details in the scenery. This is how I simplify it. because we don't have hours and hours of time in the everyday. All of us are very, very busy, so it's like impossible to commit even like 2 hours, 3 hours to sketch something. Yeah. So it's very, very important to have a positive and confident mindset that we're able to finish something and capture the essence within a short amount of time. Yeah, so in my YouTube videos, I'm trying to help you understand that it's actually possible to carve out, let's say, maximum 45 minutes to 1 hour every day to sketch a very meaningful recording of your life. Okay, so for like other little sketches, like everyday items, kitchen items, and food, we might only need like 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, for this one, I took 45 minutes. Yeah, just keep the buildings in the distance are even more simplified into these super abstract rectangles. Some overlappings are fine. It creates movement when we have overlappings. And drawing this tree on my side of the street, just a simple contour of those leaves. Yeah, so the vanishing point is somewhere here. Just drawing those little boosts over there in the distance, and there's another I think there's a bus stop over there that I just drew. Yeah, and the windows for those buildings in the furthest distance are very much like dots. Yeah, this is how I see them, how I perceive them. And so yeah, so just don't overthink and simplify it this way when you're drawing buildings in the far distance. And now just adding some more some foliage textures, just kind of like adding a little bit more detail for this vanishing point area. Yeah, there's actually a Korean, and there's a lot of construction going on in downtown Montreal always. Some more windows. As you can see, I'm not drawing every single window on that side of the building. So just leave some blank spaces for the viewers to imagine, especially for buildings in the distance. We don't have to draw every single window. And now I am seeing and see what other details that I should add. It's better to slow down and think than just keep drawing and scribbling around. And I want to add, like actually one lady, she was walking her dog. Of course, she passed by pretty quickly. She was like turning around, so I kind of lost her body gesture, so I had to do it from my memory. I think she was like holding a really chubby bulldog or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, so when drawing people on streets, just be really brave and just try all your best. Um, the more that you do, the more stronger mental images that you would have in your mind, even when those people walked away. Yeah, so just relax. If you get tense, then you won't have a very strong mental image. So yeah, the more that you're calmed down and try to merge and be part of your environment, the better that you can capture its essence. And now just drawing some more shapes around the side. This is the side view of the park bench. It's kind of like the shape of a chair. Yeah, very foreshortened. And the wooden planks and the legs. And another one is a little bit bigger because it's a little closer to me. Again, in this armchair shape. Little accentuation around the bottom, and the wooden planks. And this small detail, it really suggests perspective. And the metallic legs on the bottom. Yeah, just like two chairs within this small space. It really helps with the perspective of the scenery. Yeah, so now I'm going back in to add some final details. This is the bar on the edge of the sidewalk over here. Yeah, it kind of helps with the perspective as well. Yeah, and just add a couple of very simple scribbles to show the texture of the tree there on the very right hand side. Okay, now I'm just adding this needle thing sticking upwards from that building over there. And just kind of fill in the dark shaded area for the store fronts, the doors on the first level of those buildings. Yeah, so when doing urban sketches, we could move beyond just like using lines. We could translate those dark shaded areas such as windows, gaps in between structures with solid black ink accentuations and shapes. So our images look, it has more density, and it also helps the viewer to kind of move around those shaded areas. And just add the sidewalk on the other side of the street. Yeah, so far my perspective lines are pretty accurate. It's not 100% accurate. So when we're doing urban sketching like this, improvising, you don't have to be 100% perfect, but you do have to know what kind of perspective it is. Yet don't get too constricted with the rules, okay? So you can totally be looser, sketch looser. And yeah, so I just drew the pedestrian walkway stripes. Yeah, it's kind of like contained within our carpet shape. And some final lines around there. Taking our time to kind of looking at the real scenery and see what I can add to my sketch. Okay, probably gonna add a little more on the very right hand side over here, and like a tiny little person in the distance close to that bus stop over there. And I think I want to add, just fill in this sidewalk with these lines of tiles, just the rows. Yeah, so again, they are all merging into the vanishing point in there. And here is a look of my finished line drawing. It took me about 25 minutes. And yeah, I'm pretty lucky that the rain is not here yet. I'm gonna continue with watercolor painting. Okay, so yeah, so when painting a landscape, I always like to paint the sky first. I think this is the same for pretty much all watercolor artists. Most of the time they paint the sky first. It's the negative space wrapping around everything around. Yeah, so just wetting the sky area first with clear water, so the color is gonna be very fluid and translucent and smooth. So grabbing a little bit of cerulean blue and a bit of ultramarine blue, mix these two together. The sky is kind of this deep blue tone today because it's overcast with rain clouds, and leaving lighter stripes in between to show the cloud structures, and also using different brush pressure. So yeah, we'll have different shapes and lengths of brushstrokes. Yeah, and also I'm using these brushstrokes to show the movement, the turbulence in the sky, because the sky is never like static or still. It's always moving, especially on a day, before the storm, full of movements. And adding a little bit of the touches of cerulean blue around the bottom, so it looks a little bit more lively and attractive. Yeah, cerulean blue is a more vibrant color than ultramarine and cobalt blue. Yeah. And the sky is done. I think I captured the atmosphere, and then I'm not going to overwork on it. So now moving down, I want to paint. So rather than painting the buildings right now, the sky is still wet. The blue is going to merge into, it's going to run into the building area. So it's a good idea to not paint the buildings right now and paint another area far away from the sky, which is the concrete street color. So I mix my own gray with blue, magenta, and a little bit green. So right now I have this kind of like a dark purple brownish gray. It's very interesting. It's more lively than just using water mixed into the black. Yeah, and same for the sidewalk over here as well. Yeah, so the color of the sidewalk and the road is actually a slightly different tone of gray. So if we mix a little bit more green into the trial, it's going to be of a more greenish gray. If you mix a little more magenta into the trial, it's going to be more of a purplish gray. So yeah, really play around with the different ratios of blue, green, and magenta when mixing your own gray or black. And now I'm just adding the first layer for these buildings. It's a mix of medium yellow and yellow ochre. Yeah, this warm color is very nice, contrasting color with the color of the sky and the street. Blending on a little bit yellow orange, nice and loose for that building there. And for this second layer, we really have to relax and loosen up. There's no absolute chunks of colors. Just feel free about blending the two layers of colors together without any hard edges. And putting on some brown or burnt sienna for that building in the middle in the back. Just punching these colors very juicy right on there without over stirring, so they stay vibrant. So if we stir the patch of paint too much, they're going to lose the vibrancy. Yeah, so just punch the colors on, let it go, let the colors blend together. Putting on a bit of yellow ochre over there, so a lot of leftover colors. And also these buildings in the back, their colors can be a little bit more pale to create a sense of distance. The colors for the buildings in the front could be more stronger, just so it really draws the viewers in right away. Yeah, and this building in the back is a little bit more vibrant yellow color, so medium yellow mixed in with a little bit orange. I'm going to paint the pattern of the abstract mural later on top of that bright yellow. Yeah, so now this sketch is looking a little more powerful with nice balance of warm and cold colors. And just grabbing some leftover bluish gray that I mixed with blue, green, and magenta for those window areas. Yeah, just quick little brush strokes. And also the shade areas in between each of these buildings. Putting a little more vibrant red for the banner over there. Yeah, so it's nice to have a super vibrant and juicy color such as that red in the middle there. Yeah, so that's the key focusing point of this sketch. It's good to have a really vibrant color that pops out. And putting on a little bit viridian green mixed with yellow ochre for the first layer of these trees. Yeah, it's nice to have some green here too. Yeah, I think trees and other greeneries are very important as part of urban landscapes. Yeah, putting on some brown here and there. A little bit this leftover gray for these heritage buildings. So a lot of these heritage buildings, they could have like this dark grayish brown or gray color. Yeah, so when the first layer of that tallest building is dried, I'm ready to paint the second layer wet on dry. So these shapes are really nice and crisp and not sinking down by the wet paint. And yeah, just these kind of like very open leafy shapes for the mural. The red. Yeah, so the red color really adds more interest in this sketch. And grab a little bit raw umber to paint some of those buildings in the distance. Just painting very loosely, not covering the whole large shape. But the color from the first layer is still really visible. Yeah, and adding a little bit leftover gray here and there, following my observations. Yeah, and just punch these colors on. A little bit more raw umber for this building in the distance. So again, drawing and painting can be a really abstract process that we should judge less about the likeliness that we are capturing, but more about the sensations expressed in terms of those imperfect lines and loose brushstrokes. And because we're humans, we can't really create like perfect lines and colors like cameras do, but we could capture something that cannot be captured by cameras. And yeah, and there are actually a lot of these happy red colors jumping out from these buildings. Yeah, so we're just gonna put them a little bit stronger here and there around the banners of these stores and restaurants. Okay, so now I think I'm ready to kind of push into stronger tones, right? Pretty much the same color. As you can see, the first layer, these colors of yellows and light greens are very watery. So now this new layer, as you can see, this burnt sienna contains less water and more strong pigment. All right, and a little bit here, using different kind of brush strokes, use thinner brush strokes to show smaller areas. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna add another layer of shade around the bottom of these buildings. Yeah, around the sidewalk here and there. And also for the street is gray, but it still contains a different shade of gray closer to the bottom of these buildings. So these buildings are somehow giving like a large cast shadow into almost the middle of the street. So like that. Yeah, just play around with these browns and adding another layer of stronger green for the tree over here, like viridian green, mixed with a little bit of yellow ochre and also containing less water. Use a little choppy brush strokes to show the texture of foliages. Same for this little tree on the other side of the street. Okay, and now just grabbing some medium yellow mixed with a bit of orange to paint these marks for the pedestrians walkway. Yeah, and I think this yellow color in the foreground that really pops. It draws the viewer and guides the viewer into the sketch. Yeah, it's a pretty important element here. And just grab a little bit cerulean blue to paint these street signs on the lamp post right over here. And pretty juicy orange for the banner over here. Yeah, so on that banner is actually a candidate of this district. So it's voting season here in Montreal. And yeah, there are a lot of banners of candidates all around the city or all around the lampposts. And a little bit more brown, nice and light. Yeah, a little bit leftover gray for that pedestrian sign over there. And for the lamp post, use leftover gray. Yeah, so I just grab a little bit blue and magenta to mix my own deep purple gray. Yeah, just paint the car over there and leaving a little highlight on top of that car. When we're painting most things, we don't have to fill every single space of that object shape with paint. We can always leave a little bit of highlight somewhere around in the middle of that object or on the side, just so they look very flexible with movement. Painting these benches with dark brown or raw umber. Yeah, adding a little bit texture for the concrete tiles. So this one actually has more details. And right now I'm just using a very simple broken brush strokes to show the form and not every single detail. A little bit more shade. Yeah, so the road is never perfectly flat. There's always a little bit relief and shadows from other objects, or just to show that it's a little uneven. And just painting another layer of red for the mural on the building. It's a really abstract mural. Yeah, and of course, just trying my best to kind of depict what's there on the side of this building. So most of the time when watercolor or other artists working with other mediums, when they're painting on location, they simplify a lot of things. So yeah, they tend to blur out a lot of the details. It seems like the paintings look so detailed, but actually a lot of unnecessary details are omitted. So the process of learning to sketch better and faster is to learn how to simplify. Okay, simplify and yet still capture the necessary details within that urban or nature landscape. Usually, it could take so many years of practice to find this balance, to know that how much is good enough and not overwork. Yeah, and add some more little vibrant colors and little dots here and there. So when sketching in real life, we can have a lot of sensory aspects around us, like the sound we hear, the true colors that we see with our eyes that cannot be captured by cameras or videos. So the color palette that we're using in on location sketches can be pretty different from doing paintings with reference photos. So that's something that I found over the years, that my colors could be more loose and vibrant when I'm painting on location, and I also work way faster when I'm on location. When I work with reference photographs, sometimes I feel like that I have to create a piece that look exactly like that photo, and yeah, sometimes I may tend to overwork it a little bit and try to make it so perfect. So yeah, sometimes I could take 2 or 3 hours on an ink and watercolor sketch the same size as this when working with reference photos. So yeah, so I prefer working on location, as much as possible, unless when I'm doing some commission work, that people from far away sending me photos of sceneries that I'm not able to go to, then I have to work from reference photos. But most of the time, I try my best to do all of my paintings from real life observations. Yeah, so I just painted the people's outfits and trying to make their outfits color a little more dense and in contrast with their surroundings. And these days, I'm drawing less and less frame for a full page urban sketch like this, and just have like a very loose open edge for these sketches, just for this scenery to expand, all the way outside the page frame and not being constricted inside a frame like a photograph. So there's a lot more sense of flow of the sketch without a frame wrapping around it. Just painting these little seagulls or pigeons. And yeah, I'm gonna take maybe another minute to add a final polish. Yeah, I think I need a little more contrast for this building behind. It's a prism shape. One side is bright, the other side is away from the sunshine. Even though it's an overcast day, the sunshine is still acting. So yeah, so just observe a little deeply to see which side of the building is the bright side and which one is the shaded side. And that's pretty much it. They're just adding some grays here and there, just so these buildings have structures that pops out. Yeah, a little bit here and there. Almost invisible brushstrokes. Yeah, and finally just grabbing this vibrant orange for this barrier street sign over there, the road sign, and final bits there. That's it. So here is the look of my finished sketch. So it took me 45 minutes. This video is in real-time speed. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. If you like it, please click like and leave me a comment below. Subscribe to my channel for weekly updates. So I update this channel about 2 to 3 times a week. And there are a lot of squirrels in this park. Yeah, and these squirrels are always so fun, entertaining, and cute to look at. Yeah, alright. So I will see you around next time, everyone. Have a great weekend.